Just let your body fall still. Your back straight. Allow your awareness to come to the crown of your head and float gently down, bringing a sense of relaxation and peace, releasing the tension behind the eyes. The jaw. Coming down to the shoulders, back of the neck. Just breathing in and breathing out, relaxing. Down through your arms, all the way to the tips of your fingers. And floating down your torso, past your shoulder blades, down to the small of your back, to your sit bones. Let your belly be soft to receive the full breath. Float down your legs, past your knees, to the soles of your feet and the tips of your toes. Your entire body in a state of peaceful relaxation. Feel the places where your body touches the seat, the mat, the floor. Stable, grounded. Allow a sense of safety to arise in your mind. Well held in the arms of Mother Earth. Now I invite you to allow your awareness to rise. And as it does so, experience a lifting, a straightening, a brightening, as your awareness comes back to the crown of your head and connects to the energy of the heavens. Vast, luminous, the energy of the Father. Experience a sense of contentment. Thinking, I have enough. I invite you to bring the Mother energy up and let the Father energy descend, and let them come together at the heart in a sense of love in the aspect of a small sphere of light, a warmth, pleasant and sweet. Let the love fill you up. And now let's fine-tune our awareness by bringing it to the tip of the nose, to the sensation of the breath, wherever it manifests most distinctly for you, as it flows out and back in again. Without force or impedance. Without preference for long or short. Simply like waves upon the shore. Let the body breathe and attend to that single point, that sensation. Aware of the exhale and the pause, and the inhale and the pause, with a sense of wonderment. How amazing. And pay particular attention to the end of the out-breath. Thoughts will come please think about your intention for being here this evening. And take an opportunity to transform it, whatever it may be, into actualizing our highest human potential, to reach a state of perfect enlightenment, that we might be of the greatest benefit to all living beings. And in order to reach enlightenment, we take refuge. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, and in the Sangha, the community of practitioners on this path. This is our outer refuge. And we take inner refuge in the mind of enlightenment, in seeing reality as it is, and in the Arya beings who have. And we take ultimate refuge with confidence in the knowledge that the nature of our own mind is wisdom. Its expression is clarity, and its compassion is all-pervasive. And we make an offering of a mandala in order to receive these teachings and the blessings that come with. Ryan, would you be so kind?
Sashi Buki Jushin Vitotram Vira Vinci Inde Kempali Sange Shindu Mite Wari Drokunanda Shinva Chupasho Yam Guru Sange Shiram Sokhi Chutnam La Jamshu Vadu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chinyam Gipe Sunamki Drola Penshu Sange Drupasho Chiram Sokhi Chutnam La Jamshu Vadu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chinyam Gipe Sunamki Drola Penshu Sange Drupasho Chiram Sokhi Chutnam La Jamshu Vadu Dagni Kyapsuchi Dagi Chinyam Gipe Sunamki Drola Penshu Sange Drupasho.
As a bit of a recapitulation, we can go back and think about the first night in which we spoke about the nature of the mind. And the definition of mind is merely clear and knowing. Right, merely clear and knowing. And that mind has discoverable beginning nor discoverable ending. That mind comes from mind. And we did a meditation on the continuity of consciousness, yes? Going back and back and back and back and back and back and back. And then beyond back, right? And then forward, to get kind of a sense of how the mind is a stream of consciousness. And the repercussions of that, the meaning of that, what does that mean if I have a mind that is clear and knowing, and that it continues life after life after life? Then it makes sense to have an idea of what creates our world, what created this life, what created that will create the next life. Scriptures tell us that if we want to know what kind of a life we had in the past, then look at this life. And if we want to know what kind of a life we're going to have in the next life, look at our mind. Buddhism is a path for training the mind. We explained that enlightenment is that wonderful definition. It's a mind filled with love, compassion, and wisdom. It's completely free of ignorant hatred, ignorant attachment, and ignorance itself. It's filled with boundless joy, an unstoppable wellspring of happiness, peace, and contentment. And then we looked at what is love. This wish for the beloved to have happiness. And from love and compassion comes this pure intention to give happiness and freedom from suffering. And the only way to do that, really, the only one who has the potential to, with complete wisdom, is a Buddha. So we have this great wish to reach enlightenment in order to be of the greatest benefit. And to have a wish to reach enlightenment, it's a good idea to really know what that means. If that's what we're saying, we want to be enlightened. And we talked about then how do we do that? How do we become enlightened? What are the steps along the path? How do we train our mind in order to become enlightened? We don't know, right? We don't know. So we need a teacher. And we look, we check, and we find a teacher. Checking, making sure that the teacher has the qualifications that will lead you all the way to the goal that you seek. Not taking the words, but checking the meaning. Always checking. I don't have one teacher that ever said, believe what I say. Lama Yeshe used to say, you check, dear. You check. And if there was something that we didn't get, not quite sure about that one, Lama would say, just put it on the shelf and come and visit it later. It's okay. It's good to question. He liked Westerners' questions because it showed that they had some intelligence. It was an intelligent faith when they practiced. It wasn't just a blind faith. And he felt that was useful. It is useful to analyze and to check. And once we find a teacher, then we look at this human condition. That's really what the Lam Rim, the path to enlightenment, is. It's an assessment of our human condition. And we look at the fact that we have this precious human life with all of its qualities that's so rare to find. And that's what we talked about last week, how precious this life is. And which we can look at the people that we know in our own life, just that small segment, and we can see how many people are in this room. It's a small number, right? You can go to Dharma centers all around and you see a really small portion of the population are really seeking, deeply seeking. And then those who come and take teachings, of those, how many actually do the practice? We can spend our whole life taking teachings. But the realizations only come when you are practicing, sitting. You know, I had one teacher I heard said that there's a direct correlation between the amount of time your butt is on the cushion and your realizations. So it requires a little bit of time to kind of take a look at what is this mind. We begin to see its nature, how it is that what is arising in the mind is completely essenceless. Thoughts, feelings, emotions, mental images, they have no essence. There is a teaching on the nature of reality, on emptiness itself, that says we have no control over what is arising in our mind. Think about that. What's arising in our mind is neither good nor bad. What's arising in our mind does not come without cause. What's arising in our mind is not permanent. 50% of it doesn't come from somewhere out there. And the last one is, there's nothing that arises in our mind that doesn't come from our mind. And the path to enlightenment is really, truly simple. It's purifying and perfecting your mind. And it requires awareness. It requires mindfulness. It requires recognizing what is arising. I had a conversation with someone today. She said, it's so easy to see how other people are, how they could do better, what's arising in their mind. It's so easy to see that in someone else, how they have these propensities to behave in this way. And it's so difficult to see it in oneself. And this is what we must do. We must be aware when the mind of judgment or pride or aversion or ignorant attachment, when these minds arise, we have to see them. And we can't see them if we're blindly walking, sleepwalking through our life. There's a space between what's arising and the action. And there's where we can affect the change. But we must be aware. And typically what we do is the thought arises and we begin to write the great American novel about it. And by the time we've written 3 or 4 chapters, it's really difficult to put that book down. And it becomes our habit to do that. And we've written it so in such indelible ink that it's very difficult to unconcretize it, as Lama would say. It's difficult, more difficult. But if we can catch it in the beginning, when it first arises, and we can say, girlfriend, no, that leads down the path to suffering. Why don't you pick another topic? Why don't you turn that around? And that's really what the Lam Rim does. It gives you tools to be able to turn it around. When a thought is arising, I don't like, or a judging thought. Let's take a judging thought, because we all do that, don't we? I mean, we might not do really gross negative actions, but the small ones we do. And when we judge, just a small judgment coming, if we catch it right there, then we apply some antidote by saying, okay, we might say, you know what, they never help. I'm always doing all the work. And then we look around and we say, oh yeah, I did it last week too. And that one never does anything. And last week she didn't help. And I'm sure next week she's not going to help. And so we set up this in motion. But as soon as, if it arose, oh, no, they're not helping. Well, if we were able to apply wisdom to that, as opposed to some judgment, we could get out of our own way and we could ask for help in a sweet way, in a non-judgmental way, in a not, I'm putting you down because you're not helping, but simply asking, wonder if you'd be willing to help put the cushions away. Instead of, I always have to do it myself. It's funny. It's funny. We get ourselves trapped in these circles of dissatisfied mind because we latch on to a thought and make it real. But the more we sit in meditation and take a look at our mind and see what's arising and falling, rising and falling, we see that even the juicy ones, even the ones that we really like, that we would like to hold on to, even those go. It's important when you sit to be diligent, to be vigilant, and to not allow yourself to space out. Not allow yourself to go ahead and follow that train of thought that seems so useful. When you're sitting, sit. And when you're analyzing, analyze. When you're washing the dishes, wash the dishes. And if you want to apply a mind training technique to the things that you're doing, do it in a way full of awareness. I mentioned, as you open the door, be aware that you're opening the door, and then attach a Dharma thought to it. I'm opening the door to liberation. Or, I'm closing the door on samsara. I'm washing away all of the suffering of all sentient beings. You take a shower, oh, I'm purifying all those negative thoughts I had today. Down the drain, finished. It's training our mind, that's all. It's so simple, it's just training our mind. So that what arises in our mind is happiness, peace, contentment. Because we don't entertain the other ones. They've stopped coming. In time, they just stop coming. And it's recognizing that we have this precious human life. And the next topic is it's not going to last. So I gave you the prayer, Lama Tsongkhapa's prayer, the source of all my good. The first verse, the source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path. Grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. So we think about that. If I'm lucky enough to find a teacher, then how do I hold them in my heart? We think about how to treat our teacher, how to respond to our teacher, how to be with our teacher. Our teacher wants, the way to be with the teacher is to serve the teacher. How? By practicing. That's what the teacher wants, practice. And the second verse is, bless me to realize that this excellent life of leisure and opportunity I've found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its meaning night and day.
Take as many.
Its meaning. Take its meaning. In other words, use it night and day. Use it night and day. Think about how precious it is. When you lay your head down at night, thinking, okay, I need to rest this body so that I'll be in good shape tomorrow in order to practice. May even in my dreams, I benefit sentient beings. All the time, trying to find ways to train our mind. And when we wake up in the morning, first thing, open your eyes and think, fantastic, I have another day I can practice. May I be of benefit to others today. So we're always thinking, every moment that we can, whenever we can be mindful, whenever it comes up, to find a way to train in loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, joy, letting go of their opposites. Because to purify means simply that, to let go and let go of the causes. In other words, not to cultivate those seeds that produce weeds in your beautiful garden. And perfecting all the positive qualities, growing those, rejoicing when you're generous, recognizing it, not just giving something, but now stopping to think about what that means. This practice of generosity, giving something to another out of love, not out of wishing to receive something in return. That's how we train our mind in the practice of generosity. And the third verse is, my body and the life in it are fleeting, as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon. And help me find sure knowledge that the things I've done, the white or black, and what these deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then to stop even the slightest wrong of the many that I do, and to try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that I may. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says, if you can keep death as your guide, as a good friend, if you can think of death as a good friend, that's saying, I want to get the quote right, like a friend cautioning, be careful, be earnest, another day is passing. Don't let your life pass you by. Take every moment that we can to be of benefit to ourselves and to others. In the Tibetan Buddhist path, there is a meditation that's done. We think about death. I remember the very first time. My very first Tibetan Buddhist lecture was in 1970, must have been 1974. And I had heard that it was going to be a Tibetan Buddhist monk that was going to give this lecture. And I thought I had an idea of what a Tibetan Buddhist monk would look like. I thought they would be Tibetan.
Bald.
Yeah, thin. I thought, kind of had an idea. But this was an American Tibetan Buddhist monk. And he was a former football player for the Chicago something. So, and he gave, the lecture that he gave was on this specific topic, on death and impermanence. And when he came to some point, he says, and then, like that, the life finishes. And he looked right at me. And then as we were going home, my husband said, "What did you think about the lecture?" And I said, "That's so morbid. Why would you want to think about death? I want to think about life. I don't want to think about death." But death is a good advisor. Death is a good advisor. If we think about death, it's a good motivator. If we think that, can you imagine what your life would be like if you never took tomorrow for granted? Or next week? How would you live your life if you thought each day might be your last? It's interesting to think about. It's interesting to think, one of my practices is to think when I go to bed at night that I'm dying. This is it. Because Tibetan Buddhist practice is really preparing for death. Death is coming. There isn't any question. Death is coming. And that is one of the first points. There's 3 points and 9 reasonings. And the first point is death is definite. So the reasonings, you think about it, you think, okay, there isn't any place, any one that we know that has outfoxed death. You can't go, to the top of the mountains or to under the ocean, or as a matter of fact, there's a story about a man who went to the Buddha and he said, "Please tell me how I'm going to die." And the Buddha said, "Do you really want to know? Maybe it's not so useful." He said, "Oh no, I really want to know." He says, "Well, you're going to be killed by a tree." So he thought, okay, I'm going out onto the ocean. No trees on the ocean. And actually there was a big storm and the ship was carting
Lumber?
yes, trees, Logs was what I was thinking of. And one rolled on him and killed him. So it's kind of like the idea of when the time comes, you can't outfox death. When the karma for this life finishes, that's it. And as I mentioned before, we can't say, "Oh, excuse me, wait just a minute, I'm going to check the internet to see what the weather's going to be like, what I should pack to take with me." So death is definite. The lifespan just keeps getting shorter each day. Each day. Doesn't get longer. Each day it's shorter. And the third point is that death is going to come whether we are spiritually practicing, whether we practice the Dharma or not. Death is coming. So the point that we come to, the conclusion that we make when we actually meditate on this topic, that death is definite, the conclusion is, wow, I really better practice. Better practice. And the second point is the time of death is indefinite. We don't know when. That's the second point. And there are 3 reasonings. The first one is that the lifespan isn't fixed. According to some teachings, there are realms and universes where the lifespan is fixed, like God realms, some God realms. They live for 500 years. So if we knew we had 500 years, we could foof off for the first 350 and then get serious. But we don't know. So it's not fixed. And then, let's see, it's not fixed. There are many factors that cause death, right? Many factors. There's internal factors, like disease. So many diseases. We could probably spend the rest of the evening writing down lists of the many diseases that cause death. There are external factors, accidents, being harmed by other sentient beings. And then there are the things that we think support our life that end up being the cause of our death.
Food.
Exactly. Food. Or medicine. Maybe taking medicine. And the third reasoning is that the body is so fragile, this body is so fragile, that the only thing between life and death is breathing out and not breathing in again. It's kind of
Say that
sobering.
again.
The only thing between life and death is breathing out and not breathing in again. We don't know. We don't know if this might be our last time together, because we don't know. We don't know what will be the cause of our death. To keep that in our mind, to understand, to know that it is true that I will die, and it is true that I don't know when, then we make the life meaningful. We, by having that be our advisor, not in a morbid sense. It's not meant to be morbid, even though I thought that when I first heard that. I thought, let us not focus on death, let us focus on life. And that would be great. But we have to understand that it's so temporary. It's so fleeting. Sogyal Rinpoche wrote a poem once, also heard it very early on. I was quite young. I was young once.
You're still young.
And I read this poem, and in the poem he said, the life is like a flash of lightning. And I thought, well, that's a bit of an exaggeration, isn't it? But when you get to be a little older, and you look back, and you think, wow, it is like a flash of lightning. It is. So we have to think, if we think like that. So what happens, the conclusion, when we come to the conclusion that the time of death is indefinite, is, okay, I've concluded that I better practice, and now not only better practice, but I better practice now. Not waste. I better practice now. And the third point, so death is definite, the time of death is indefinite, and the third point is there's nothing that's going to be of any use at the time of death except our Dharma practice, except our spiritual intelligence. And we can look what happens at the time of death. The three reasonings are, what about our friends and family? Can they help us?
In a way.
Yes?
My mother died. Everyone was trying to keep her there. And then my son called, put the phone up to her ear, and he said, Mama Nina, just relax.
Yes.
And that was it.
Yes. Yes. But he couldn't go with her.
No. No.
That is good. It is true. And this is a big point. What you make is a very good point. It's a big point in Tibetan Buddhism. My lamas always say, when someone is dying, it's so important to have a peaceful surrounding and not to have relatives crying and holding them back and please don't go, because it creates an attachment to this body. It's the 10th link in the 12 links of dependent origination is the link of existence, which comes from grasping onto the inherent existence of self. So that it goes from, the first link is ignorance. From ignorance we create actions that plant seeds on the consciousness. that ripen in name and form. The sixth sense doors develop. They come into contact. A feeling arises. We crave more of the positive and less of the negative, and we don't care about the neutral. And we grow that craving into grasping. And the grasping, specifically at the time of death, grasping onto the inherent existence of self, is the thing that then leads to rebirth, followed by aging and death. So round and round and round we spin. So we say, okay, family and friends cannot go with us. We go alone. How about all of our possessions, those things we work so hard for? Our nice house, our nice car, our precious jewels, yes. Our pets. All those things. All those things that we just had to have. I'll be so happy, when we get the new curtains, when I get a new cover on the sofa, or the new rug. All those things we work toward, we leave behind. We go empty-handed. We go alone, and we go empty-handed. And even the one possession that we have, that we cherish the most, this body, even that deserts us at the time of death. And the conclusion is, okay, I better practice really well. I better practice now, and I better practice really well. This is a meditation, an analysis that one does, going through these points, point by point, the 3 points and the 9 reasonings, until you come to the conclusion that, wow, okay, it's really true. I get it. It's hard to get the fact that the time of death is indefinite. It's relatively easy to get the idea that I am going to die, but we all think it's not going to be today. It's not going to be tomorrow either, right? We don't think so anyway. It's kind of surprising. And even people who have terminal illnesses often don't think it's going to be today. And somebody has a terminal illness, I might die before them, right? It feels kind of sad to start thinking like that, to think, oh, I am going to die. And I think about my children, people I love. But they're going to die too. We shouldn't be surprised. Because when the karma for the life finishes, we die. And our friends die. And our children die. But we hold dearly, we hold as most precious those ones that we label friends and family. And in fact, it's a fleeting relationship. If you look at, and we talk about this in an equanimity meditation, you look at, if we've had countless lives, then that child of mine could have very easily been one of my biggest enemies. And we don't think so much about those people over there who are dying. But this one that's close to me, then we think about that one. But in fact, all beings are precious. And if we could just reach that state of peerless enlightenment, to be able to help others. Stop creating the cause for the suffering that puts us through this treadmill of birth, aging, sickness, and death. You see, we practice to be able to die. His Holiness says, maybe, I think I heard 8 times a day, he practices the death meditation. We're going to do that tonight. We're going to die tonight. It's a good thing to do. This Tibetan Buddhist meditation is a simulation of what happens as we die, the elements dissolving in the body, and what happens as a result. So I thought it would be useful to do that meditation. But I think first we'll take a little break. And there's tea and goodies in the back. Fortify yourself. In preparation.
You die.
Die in a strong way. With energy. Thank you.
You're welcome.